Welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. Hi Jim, how you doing? We missed you last time.
Doing great, Douglas. It was the youngest granddaughter's nativity play of the day, and by goodness, she was good. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. But I'd like to take this opportunity, if I could, to first of all thank Willie for, making sure the boat was still floating and stepping in at the last minute. Just to let everybody know, the circumstances were that my wife Sheena broke her foot on Tuesday of last week, and after a session at the hospital, she came home, but everything was just getting worse. As a consequence, we had to go back out to the hospital on Thursday night, where she got one of these moon boots on, which she wears now religiously, I've got to say. And hopefully by Friday, we'll know what the score is once she goes back in and sees some of the experts again. So just thanks very much, Willie, and thank you everybody for your patience with me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Hopefully she's on the mend, so we'll hear news of that in future episodes, no doubt. Today we're joined, folks, by a member of the Ayrshire Young Masons and the junior deacon at Bolton 135. Cronies everywhere, please welcome Stephen Borland.
Hi everyone.
Hi Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm good, Douglas. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's good to see a younger member of our Burns world being prepared to have a go at this. That's tremendous. Stephen, we ask the same question every time. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
I can indeed. Well, my name is Stephen Borland. I'm a member of Bolton Co-winning St James 135, and also now actually I'm the vice president or the vice chairman of the Ayrshire Young Masons Association as well. I'm an operational firefighter with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and part-time farmer. Me and my partner live in a farm in sunny Ayrshire, which is always a delight, especially now that we're into the winter season. So it is. So between firefighting, masons, and part-time farmer, it's all go, dare I say.
So are you born and brought up in the area?
I was born in Irvine in 1996. Spent all my days in Coylton. So I have still just outside the village now, but still a Coylton boy through and through. But yeah, born and bred.
So was it Coylton Primary School?
It was Coylton Primary School. In fact, everything Coylton Playgroup, Coylton Nursery, Coylton Playgroup. There's no a secondary school in Coylton, so that was the later part was Ayr Academy in at school. And out to the big bad world working.
Very good. So you mentioned being a part-time farmer. Is that you're from a farming family?
No, not as such. At a certain point, growing up, my brother certainly introduced me to it a wee bit. I said I had a lot of friends who were the dairy farmers. One just outside the village, still to this day. A friend of mine, his dad, and him, that they all have a dairy farm just outside the village. So growing up, when you were growing up, seeing him, you had ample opportunity to have a wee shop, putting a unit on a cow, and you were getting introduced to milking cows at a very young age. And then it started where you were looking for a bit of like part-time work. Ironically enough, when I was a wee boy, the place where I'm living now was where I used to work when I was a wee boy. I walked down here one day and asked the boy if he had a job for us, and I used to get off the school bus, come and feed the cows, and then go home. And then in the mornings I would come down here, put stone up and down the road with a wee bobcat, and I'm still doing it now, just the bobcat's not there. I'm using a wheelbarrow. So the jobs are the same as a wee boy. You're just not getting paid for it this time. You're getting paid with experience. Whereas back then you got the odd £20 every time you done the road or fed the cows.
That's brilliant. So we couldn't persuade you into my father was a farmer or anything like that.
Oh yeah, nothing like that as of yet. No.
Very good. So firefighting, how did you get from the wee boy helping at the farm to firefighting? You mentioned earlier on that you're going via the police.
Yeah, I did. So it's one of those ones. I would certainly consider it similar to Frank Spencer with the amount of jobs I had growing up, but at the same time of day, circumstances change, life's changed. So when I left school, I was working in the farms and I was working part-time in a clothes shop up the high street in Ayr. When that all stopped, I went working full-time, self-employed with my mum and dad's friend Neil, building fences up all over the country. You were down the way, you were up the way, you were sideways, you were everywhere, building fences and all aspects of the typical Scottish weather. Dare I say, but that knowledge and information is stuck with me because all those years later, I'm fencing here at the farm at the house, and I went to work with the Network Rail on the railway tracks as an engineer. And as I was doing that for a few years, it was quite good, but I wasn't enjoying it. And I joined the British Transport Police as a volunteer. So you were working on the railway, and then you were giving up your time going out policing as a special constable. And then I gave all that up to join as a full-time police officer, but you were in a firearms unit. So I was doing that, and then where it was, again, circumstances just happened, like the place where it was at was shutting down. So I applied for Police Scotland and the fire brigade at the same time, and the fire brigade came out quicker. I don't know how my life would have changed if it had pursued down the policing route still, but I cannot stress this enough. It's been the best thing I've ever done, applying and joining the fire service.
Where are you based?
I'm based out of Dreghorn, so we cover the area of Irvine. To be fair, you could be covered everywhere, right enough, just depending on whatever you're dealt with at the time. But yeah, good old sunny Dreghorn.
And is it a pretty busy life as a fireman? Or, firefighter?
It can be. It certainly can be. You'll have people watching this who'll say they do nothing all day. And really, you will have that. And then you'll have the ones that are in the job and they'll agree with you. But then all you need is that one shift where, something will happen. It does happen. It really does. They'll say, oh, you're doing nothing, you're sleeping. I used to say it myself when I was with the police, but then when you experience it and you have a couple of years at it, it's fantastic. So it is. I love my job. I really do.
Very good. And you must be getting into some pretty dangerous situations.
Aye, but that's the same with every aspect of life. I mean, it's dangerous crossing the street nowadays. Do you know what I mean? It's the same with everything. It's a part of the job, but we keep ourselves safe. And sure enough, that's all you can do, isn't it?
Yeah. I suppose that's what the training's all about.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Let's get back to the farming a wee bit. I usually do a wee bit of research before we do these podcasts, and social media is a great place. And I noticed that you were based on a farm, and I noticed that you also had some links to some horse sites, but I didn't see any pictures of you and a horse.
They pictures are hidden deepest, darkest in the internal storages of my phone. I don't mind horses. I really don't. It's a love-hate relationship. They love me. I hate them. My girlfriend Phoebe, when we started seeing each other, she had 7 horses.
7?
So she had 7, Jim. Aye. Sure enough, you're always going to get a shot. You really are. One of her horses was Coco. It was a brilliant horse. I realise he's no longer here. He is, unfortunately. But it took me a wee while to get the gumption or to get the nerve to have a wee go. And I says, how hard can it be? Now, don't get me wrong, the girls on our yard, it's quite funny because I love winding them up to the point where it's like they're doing something. I says, that's easy. That's terribly easy what you're doing. And I love winding them up because I feel like humour nowadays, there's just none of it. Do you know what I mean? Everything's so serious. You can't have a joke with anybody. And sure enough, Phoebe taught me how to do one of these things called lunging. It's a big long line. You put it on the horse and you make it run round in a circle. And I was standing there doing this, and I went, how hard can it be? She showed us, gave me a shot. She went, you're all right. You're doing it no bad. Once I stopped spinning and I stood still, geez, you should have said you were right dizzy. But it's a good laugh. Horses are all right, but it's between them and milk and coos. I think I prefer the dairy inside of farming, but horses are great fun.
Like Jim, my daughter was into horse riding as well, and I know Jim's. Is it your granddaughter, Jim? That's
Aye, the big one. She's got a horse.
Aye, and I used to go at the stables and was amazed that these wee lasses were dealing with these huge animals, and I was just scared stiff.
Yeah. Well, we had a funny one a couple of weeks ago. There, my brother, he's older than he's 6 years my senior, right? It's brilliant when we're talking away. I want a shot on a horse. And he sat on Coco when he was still here, and walked him to the field, and he hated it. And then Phoebe phoned me, "Can you come down to the shed quickly?" I went, "Aye, no worries." So I come down, and sure enough, Kevin's sitting on the back of Summer, and I was just looking, and he's quite high up. So me being the silly younger brother, he's petrified. So I grabbed the lead and started walking with the horse, and she's just doing her thing. Kevin's sitting there rigid, rigor mortis set in, he wasn't moving.
Dear, I can imagine that. I would be equally scared. So you said you're a part-time farmer. What size of farm is it? What do you do?
Well, like I said, now it's a horsey yard. It's an equestrian facility that my partner Phoebe runs as her job. Me, part-time farmer, that means on the days off, if something needs done when I'm not firefighting. Even a horse has broke a stab or a bit of fencing, it needs redone. So sure enough, those fencing skills that I mentioned at the start there with Neil, you never really lose it. The worst thing I've ever done in my relationship was tell her that I used to be a fencer. See, the amount of winter days I've spent chapping in posts by hand with the big mail, you're really evaluating your life choices, going, I should have stuck in a wee bit harder at school.
She was probably pretty disappointed the first time she realised that you didn't mean a big sword.
Oh, well, here, listen, it's not the first time you disappoint her like something like that, do you know what I mean? So, like I said.
Very good. You mentioned school there. What did you cover at school? What sort of subjects did you do?
Predominantly, I think truancy was my favourite one. That was truancy. Well, no, but when you go from first year to, I think it's fourth, or was it third year? One of them, you had a fixed period that you had. You had so many lessons that you had to do, and they decided your classes. After a certain year, they altered it so that you could pick what you wanted to pursue, in your studying. So I liked PE, your physical education. I was playing rugby at school. I was hopeless at football, great at basketball, good swimming. So PE was a definite. Music, I like playing my guitar. I'm saying Phoebe had 7 horses. I've got 7 or 8 guitars. That's great when they break, but there's no that big a vet bill. You can usually do quite a bit of it yourself. So between schooling, you done your maths, English, done physics for a little while, but PE, music was great. I really enjoyed that, along with some technical woodworking. When I was there as well, they had it was like an attachment or a connection with the local college where you could go and you could learn partially trades. They were introducing trades to people. So I done wallpaper and plastering, bricklaying, and a wee bit of joinery. But like I said, I was destined to go back to farming and drive tractors, which inevitably I ended up doing. So the career aspect for quite some time was working in different farms as a relief worker, a relief milker. So you weren't based at one specific farm. If you needed somebody at Straighton needed a worker, you would go there, or somebody at Trabach or Ochiltree, Coylton, Drungan, anywhere you went, it wasn't fixed work. It was, you knew it was temporary. They could take you like that day, right? That's the last shift, and that was you. That happened a few times, and the nature of the job, unfortunately. But you certainly learnt your trade.
Aye. You mentioned sport and PE, and another part of my research noticed that you'd done a bit of obstacle courses and things like that. Was that firefighting training, or did you just do that for fun?
The Spartan race.
I don't know which one it was. I was only looking at pictures.
It was in Perth, so I can't mind when that was. It was a wee while ago. So my uncle was at the time, it was quite recently to that race, diagnosed with Parkinson's. I'd seen them everywhere, and I wanted to do something to raise some money for it. I had no idea right enough how much money would be raised. I think there was about over £500. I think there was
very good.
There was a fair amount raised for it, and I was not expecting that. I was wanting to run the race, just as a bit of a challenge, because like I says, at the time I was fit growing up. It went from fit to fat quite quickly, and I wanted to give myself a little challenge. So I think it was a 5 mile or 5K, but it was like 40 odd obstacles, so it was quite good. But it was I done that for Parkinson's research and fundraising for it. And like I said, my uncle's he's not with us anymore, unfortunately. He passed away this year. But he was able and fit enough to see the pictures and see the progress for it. And I'll never forget him. He was saying how proud he was for it, because it's like, I did say it. I says, like, thank you for sponsoring me. He went, no, thank you, because you're raising awareness for it. And sure enough, it was. I'll never ever forget that till the day I go, how proud he was of me for doing that. Neither I will. But it's always fun. I like the charity aspect of it. I really did.
And that gives us a good link into your involvement with the Masons. Two questions. One is you seem to be a very active Mason, and secondly, can you tell us a little bit about the Ayrshire Young Masons?
I can indeed. So I'll go on record till my dying day saying that Masonry is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's not a plug. They're not telling me to say this or anything like that. I joined Masonry at 18 years old, because my dad was a member, my brother was a member. It was only natural. But I had a thing for burns, from primary school. There was always a fondness. There really was. And my dad, he's a past master now after Bolton winning St James 135. And my dad's friend and our family friend growing up, the Lindsays, they used to stay across the road from us. William Lindsay is a past master there as well. And when I found out he was in the Masons, my dad was in the Masons, I kept on trying to get the secrets. I was like, come on, tell me the secrets. Come on, I can keep a secret. Tell me. I'll tell you one day. And I'll never ever forget it when you're there doing your ritual, you're doing the meeting, and he's telling you all this stuff. It was a thing close to fate, if ever I can say that. But when I joined, I was a very shy guy. I really was. And don't get me wrong, I'm still shy now, but you can kind of play on it a little bit. Like it says, 18-year-old me would never have done something like this. Or I don't think I could have done anyway, considering the time working with the police and throughout my life. But I joined at 18 and then got right stuck into it, learning as much as I could, getting out and about, visiting. And I had a wee break with it. So when I was doing a passport, which is when you go around all the lodges and the secretary signs it to say you've been to that lodge meeting, I had a substantial break in mine. So I think I'm 28 now, so I joined 10 years ago. And I still haven't been around them all, but I was working down in England quite a lot. I was in London, I was back up, I was back down, so I had no time. And as a shift worker with the police, it's kind of impossible, because they were cancelling your days off, they were forcing you to come in, they were telling you that, you got your days off, but you were never free to do it. You never really got to go out and about and do it. And the fire brigade certainly gave you that that time, because I'm on my annual leave now, hence the days. We don't have them usually when you're everyday firefighting. So my annual leave has consisted mostly of going visiting with the Masons, or working here on the farm. But I've loved it. I've taken up an office, and I started going through this several the lower level, the lower level. That's the wrong word there. The offices that don't have a speaking role, for example, and now I'm in the offices that do, and you're learning different ritual work. You're doing different things, visitations, and like I said, it's never done me any harm. It's built me up that confidence, and we do so much charity work in the local communities. It's unbelievable. This year alone, the Masons donated over £1 million to Prostate Scotland.
Wow.
Over £1 million just donated.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
It is unbelievable. It really is. I know the Freemasons down in England, they donated, I don't know, I can't remember the amount, but they certainly donate. I think they donated after Grenfell, the disaster down at Grenfell. They donated money to buy fire appliances for the high reach towers.
Wow.
They said, they'll just take it, do it.
Yeah,
you need it. This needs to happen. And they donated it. They donate money for everything. They're such good providers to charities. The Ayrshire Young Masons is a thing that I was saying to my dad. It was quite funny that the boy that started it, Will Rowan, his name was, or is, he's a friend of mine. And I'll never forget it. Like, it was a couple of weeks before it, I says to my dad, I says, it's great, Mason. I love coming out and meeting guys, but is there anything for the younger people, or the younger individuals, or the newest members, where they can all just talk to each other? And sure enough, this thing started 2 or 3 weeks later. And I got involved with it. I then eventually joined the committee as a committee member and started just getting involved, giving ideas. But I was never one for saying, this is its own thing. It's not. That the Ayrshire Young Masons is established to encourage the members who have just went and joined Masonry, that's one of their degrees, to keep them coming back to the lodges, to keep them coming visiting, and keep them involved with Masonry. Because like I say, it really is, it's a fantastic organisation. And like everything seems to be the now, it's never going to stop. It will never stop, Masonry. But it will, it's certainly, you notice the now, especially this time, it's a wee bit slow this now with, people want to join. But people are joining. That's the thing I keep hearing. Or it's getting them to come back. It says, well, people come back. And it's just reiterating, well, this is a great thing where you can come, meet some friends, share passions. I was at a meeting the other night there, and we were talking about Burns for a wee while, some of his songs. And then, ironically enough, we were talking about music. It turns out this individual was a guitar player. I said, what guitars have you got? And he started rattling off one. The next thing you know, how do you get that many guitars? I told my missus it was only one, and I just got the same one but different colours. And I says, no, I've got 7 or 8, but they're not the same ones. So, like I said, it comes down to that. It says you meet people with similar interests and start friendships. The Ayrshire Young Masons has been great for that for myself, because
and is the idea that it goes across the various lodges. You've got your home lodge, but presumably you've got a group that crosses over other lodges.
No. So every Mason has their mother lodge. So where they're made a Freemason, that's their mother lodge. So mine's is Bolton, Coinning St James 135. The guys in the Ayrshire Young Masons, they're all from different lodges throughout Ayrshire. But this is a thing that's all over Scotland now. Different areas throughout the country have got their own Young Masons group. And it was started with, Will Rowan started through it, and our immediate past Provincial Grand Master, Billy Steele. It was all conducted and started. And now it's a great thing for encouraging guys who maybe haven't been. Now, I was telling you at the very start of this, my friend, the dairy farmer, I got him into Freemasonry, and he hasn't been for a while. And it's not down to a lack of wanting, just between his work and his home farm. Yeah. He has zero time. Yeah. But to remind him, come back every now and then. You're always welcome in the walls of a lodge. You could have a break. I had a break 2 or 3 years because of work, and nothing changed when it went back into it. And like I said, it truly is a wonderful thing, and it needs to keep going. It does, and that's only through encouragement you can keep that going. education to remind them that it's there, and keep the train moving along. So it is.
Yeah. Good. Well, you've done a good job. Good promotion. So given us an opportunity with the link to Burns is to pass you over to Jim to get him to talk to you about your interest in Burns. But I suspect they might also want to talk to you about your time in the police.
I wouldn't want to bore you, Jim, talking about that time.
Well, after 31 years of doing it, I really don't know that much I've not seen. Certainly, you wouldn't have been a friend of mine if you're involved with firearms, because I was absolutely hated with Strathclyde Police as a firearms commander. But however, we're talking Burns here. Right, you mentioned your father was obviously a Mason, and then you talked about the school. What was it that started you with Burns yourself? Was it the home or at school?
It was certainly school. I say this in my mortal memory now. You were asked, or I was certainly asked when it was Max Milligan that phoned me one day and asked me, do you know anyone at Bolton that can do an immortal memory? So I started rattling off the, John Shirkey, Gavin Barry, all these guys. You'll know them better than me.
Yep.
He says, no, but I'm looking for somebody who might be in the AYM, the young Mason. It was a young Mason's Burn Supper. And I went, well, there's only a few I can think of. And I rattled off their names. And then, there was just that kind of silence there where it was like, will you just say aye or no, Steve? He was asking me, but he went round it a silly way. I said yes. And then when I hung up the phone, I remember I was at work, and I remember saying to myself, what if I just said aye to? I knew what it was, but I didn't know what the immortal memory was. And that's when the research started. That's when the basic means I got for the immortal memory was it's a way to encapsulate how Robert Burns's work has changed your life in any way, or how his work has had an effect on you. And I went, well, how far back can I think of with Burns? And it went again to Bolton Lodge, where I went in one night when I wasn't a Mason to help my dad tidy up from the previous night's meeting. So I was mopping a floor or hoovering, and I met John Shirkey. And I don't know if you have ever been in the Masonic Hall at Bolton at all.
Yeah.
Right, so when you walk in, you'll see the Tam O'Shanter on the side. Yeah. So that was my first memory of how Burns had changed your life. Because I remember saying to John Shirkey, who is arguably one of the best Burnsmen around, he said, aye, do you know anything about Burns? And I went, aye. And I rattled off the first part of Tam O'Shanter by Alloway's Old Haunted Kirk. And I was 14 or 15 at that point when I done that in front of Shirkey. And that's what I remembered when I was doing my mortal memory. And I went, well, where did I learn that in primary school? So I did. At primary school, you done a Burns supper, or it was a Burns supper, but you also done a history of Scotland week. One of the major topics, obviously, was Robert Burns, and you were given poems. You were given different poems, different year groups were given different poems. And we were primary 6 or 7, and we were given the tale Tam O'Shanter. And you were encouraged. The teachers at the time, they were desperate for you to learn it, and they were showing you how to pronounce it. And now my reading of Scots is terrible. I really have to sit down and study it and learn the word. Back then the teachers were showing you, they were really keen Burnsians as well. They were right into their Burns. Mrs. Ritchie's library, I'll never forget that. We were in there doing you were reciting it in front of all your classmates, and I'd done it. I'd learnt it, and I was proud that I could do it. And the next thing you know is I'm in front of my group of classmates, and Miss Lennox told me I wasn't going to go and do it in front of the whole school, but I still wasn't disheartened with that. I was right happy because I'm going to learn it, and I learnt it. And you'll ken it more than me. You'll have heard it more than me. There's a fair amount of words in that first section alone. For a young boy, that was a very good accomplishment. It really was. Even to this day, I'm in the process of learning it currently. I've still never had an issue with that first part. But when you hear Sir Cochrane Gourlay or you know, Bobby Green, all these boys, like there's a boy at Maybole that has done the best tam o'shanter I've ever seen, Bobby Green. You hear it and these boys do it with such ease.
Yeah.
You know, make it look easy. it's unbelievable when folk come out and do it. It really is.
Yeah. Once you've learned the words, you then need to make it into a performance and tell it as a tale.
Yeah. Well, I remember, is it Jake Buchan who was on this?
Yes, aye.
I remember watching his episode, and he said that when he performs it, you get the bonnet. He's doing the full, because you aren't just saying the words. You are doing a performance. You are telling a story.
Well, that depends on the individual.
Aye, well, this is true as well. You know, it depends. That's the best way of interpretation. You can have it one way. Like somebody could say one thing about a poem, and then my absolute favourite, you know, version of that there, Jim, what you've just said is the poem To a Mouse. Now, I'm in the process of learning that. I couldn't recite it for you, but there's a few bits in it that when I was watching it online, there's a video of Billy Connolly doing it. You know, there's a few videos of people reciting it, and you know, the big one comes out, "Wee sleekit, cowering, timorous beastie." So that was one way, but there's a gentleman to Bolton called Hugh McNeely. I cannot stress enough how much Hugh McNeely has helped me in this understanding of Robert Burns. Hugh McNeely is an absolute gentleman in every way of the definition of the word. And he sat me down one day, and he's so he's saying about, I want you to learn this, or I would like you to learn this, and he's showing you how to perform it. And he comes out with To a Mouse, it's "Wee sleekit, cowering, timorous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in thy breastie." And it shows you the two different ways you can easily perform that.
Yeah.
You get the "Wee sleekit" from Billy Connolly, and then the heartfelt, "I'm sorry I've just destroyed your house, wee mouse." You know, there's that showing you that, you know, that affection and, you know, sorrow for what he's just done. And that's the same story, but just the way you pronounce it or perform it can have a massively different impact on the story. It goes from a tale to, you know, a means of compassion towards a wee animal, or his poor earth-born companion, fellow mortal. Absolutely beautiful.
You're obviously putting a lot of thought into what you're doing with Burns. You're obviously thinking it through. It's not just a case of, you know, learning the words. You're actually thinking about them. You
kind of need to, because like it says, it goes back. There's an individual, Stuart McCarley. He's currently the Right Worshipful Master at Mauchline 133. And Stuart and I had this conversation, and I've never actually thought about it until, like it says, I wanted to host a Burns tour with the members of the Ayrshire Young Masons, then open it up to anyone who would want to do it. And me and Stuart were talking, and he said it is like, because these guys that are in this run, and without it, you know, without it taking like the dark turn, but you need to address it. One day, I'll not be able to pick up the phone and phone certain individuals because they won't be here. And these guys have got all this knowledge about Robert Burns that if you don't ask them, or if they don't tell you, it goes to that point, it's lost.
Yeah.
And you look again, it's the same part as your tam o'shanter, but I keep forgetting, but like Poppy Spread, you see the flower, the bloom is spread, or like the snowfall in the river, a moment might gone forever. That's what's happening with this knowledge. See if it doesn't get passed on, or folk don't seem to want to learn about it. That's gone. That's gone away, and you can't get it. Neither you can. But I think the more passion you put into learning about it, you're certainly able to do it justice in a degree, because like I said, once that knowledge is unobtainable, you lose the medium between truth and, wrong, right and wrong. Yeah, very profound.
I've also got to say that sitting where you are in Bolton, I mean, it's just Burns' country, and the folk. I mean, I don't know them all particularly well. I know some of the Masonic members, But I mean, I don't know how many times I've approached Shirky to ask a favour and it's never refused. You know, Burns clubs coming from Lanarkshire or someplace and he'll open up for them to let them in and see it. So I think you're right in the middle of what could be a great breeding ground and lots of information.
Yeah, I dare not say it, like a better fortunate position, there is none in relation to a young guy wanting to learn about Burns. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to say that what I consider some of the greatest Burnsmen around are members of my lodge in ways of members, honorary members, friends of the lodge. You know, I'm so fortunate because it's that's what I'm saying with Masonry. You join it, you know, there's this wrong common understanding that people who aren't in the craft think that you join it to get better jobs and your way to riches. It's genuinely not. What you gain in knowledge is the greatest richness, and that sounds like such a cliche, but you do a lot of speaking in Masonry. You then go out in town as a shy person who's now spoke in front of hundreds of people or in front of a room full of strangers, because that is what they are, and then turn into lifelong friends. When I joined, it was a room of strangers bar two people, my dad and my brother. I'm very fortunate to say my dad is still here, my brother is still there, and we're both, the three of us are still visiting, meeting new people, having fun with each other and doing so, and being, you know, linked where we are with Robert Burns. It makes it that much better because you're then learning about people's interests with the bard and what drew them towards it. And then you're learning about their previous life, you know, you're learning about their life, and you're able to draw some conclusion to a mutual friendship over this, you know, individual who lived 30 odd years of his life, but left a mark that we are still dealing with, you know, all these years later.
Yeah, and as I say, Terbolton, I mean, Burns and Terbolton, if you think of some of the, I mean, Douglas mentioned one, you know, but Burns talking about his father, right? And when you actually, it's a song, but when you read it as a poem, you learn certain things about just exactly what was happening to his head as a 23-year-old just after he come back to Terbolton for Irvine. You know, just what's then sore harassed and tired at last, with fortune's feigned delusion, I dropped my schemes like idle dreams and came to this conclusion. The past was bad, the future hid, the good and ill untried, but the present hour was in my power, and so I would enjoy it. Now that's a 23-year-old Burns, and that tells you so much about Burns just after Irvine. You know, and that happens because they're Terbolton. And then there's the Terbolton Lassies, if you've not read that, that's just a...
Oh, I've heard that more times than I've had hot dinners at Terbolton.
and then there's the Ronalds of the Binnells. You know, it's just, you know, these are great poems.
Well, see when you're saying the Ronalds there, when you get Max on this, he does a fantastic version of that. Like it says, I owe this whole tour down the Burns. You know, the Burns scene is what I've heard it been called so many times because of that boy. But I've found myself now enjoying it to the point where I was way down at was it the Burns Bachelor's performance down at the Alloway Cottage. I got up and done a turn, and it was great because it was Wally Dick, and Wally Dick's a friend of mine. I know he's been on your programme as well, a friend of yourselves. And with Wally Dick, he's one of the guys when you talk. I've watched a few documentaries, and one of them it's like In Search of Robert Burns, and it's Wally talking about, you know, being a farmer, you know, keeping things leaving. That's what Burns tried to do. That was the difficulty back then, and it's the same thing now. And that man there, he can fair tell you a lot about Robert Burns, and it's just infectious. That's what I'm saying. You go to all these things to learn about it, and they've got so much knowledge. But you should see the person I blame, and I do blame him. See, Niven, past Master Billy Niven. Billy's brilliant. The only person I know that would ever say a bad word against Billy is my partner Phoebe, because of him, there's a bookshelf completely full of Burns books.
Well, we had him and Shirky together doing a Joe podcast on the show, and it was absolutely brilliant.
I'll tell you, see that? I have watched that quite a few times. See the pair of them, I have had the absolute honour and pleasure of witnessing them, and they do a fantastic version of the Twa Dogs. They really do. I'm fortunate to say they two are my friends. You know, they really are. Shirky done a thing, and he told me this not long ago, because when I was at the Burns performance, I done the Farewell to the Brethren of Bolton, and it took me 2 days. I learnt it fairly quickly, but the last 2 lines of it are in my immortal memory. And I remember I put a wee story at the start of it saying that this was actually done. This was started, and so a tradition in Bolton before the Burn Supper. That was the day of the Burn Supper. Shirky, I want to say it was 1988, which was the year that Burns came or started as Deputy Master. Now, if this is wrong in any way, I do apologise if anyone from Bolton's watching this. But Shirky told me he started this 1988. He said to one of the boys, I'm going to walk to the lodge like what Robert Burns used to do. So he got to Musgiel, walked the back road by Musgiel East and West by Bryce's bit, and sure enough, he ended up at Bolton. And this became a tradition. In Bolton, we've got the office of Deputy Master, which is the office that Robert Burns held all those years ago. And he, back then, you know, the Right Worshipful Master wasn't always at the meetings. He was there, but it was a laird that was the rank of Right Worshipful Master. And when he wasn't there, the Deputy Master would take up the duties, and this fell down to Robert Burns. And in a way of like an homage or a means of respect, the Deputy Master, who's just about to go in the chair, does the Mosgiel walk. And the year my dad was Deputy Master, he had a bad knee, so he couldn't do it. So I done it on his behalf. So we met up at Mosgiel, we had our hip flasks full, and by the end of it, it wasn't a straight line we were walking, but we were singing, we were laughing, we were walking, sharing stories. It was absolutely brilliant. And it truly is one of the best parts before a Bolton Burn Supper. It really is.
That sounds like a great tradition.
It is. It is, and this is the thing. You need to keep these things going. Like again, Shirky's still here, so he's still doing it. He still does it. We still talk about it, and you know, we still get to do everything, and it's great. It is a fantastic tradition. You know, you're at the grounds where he worked, where these poems were written, and you're walking towards the same way he used to do. Except I'm assuming he probably would have had a horse. But if he didn't back then, you know, he'd be walking it. It's a fair old walk, but it's a good walk.
Yeah.
Just to change the space of this a wee bit. I mean, you obviously said that you did recitations at the school and stuff like that, but excluding Tam O'Shanter, which you've mentioned, have you any other favourite poems?
I really like Handsome Nell. Now, I'm in the process of learning a few. Handsome Nell, to me, it shows you at such a young age where, I believe it was 15 years old he was, and he overheard Nelly singing a song that was written by a local laird's son to impress a lassie. I felt, as soon as I heard that story, I thought, that's absolutely brilliant. He's smitten with a girl and he's going to impress her. And the means of is by writing her a song. And that, for me, Handsome Nell, that is my or one of my favourites. But it's certainly the one that makes a stand, because a 15-year-old boy coming out with rhyming styles like that, and the mannerism in which he has done, and how it's affected so many people, it truly is considered, you know, quite the romantic words. You know what I mean? Between that and My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose, that arguably one of the greatest love songs of all time, if not the greatest love song. I'm not going to, you know, destroy your ears by singing it, but I can assure you those two right there are my absolute favourites. Poem-wise, the first one I learnt was the Address to the Haggis, and that was done for a burn supper at Bolton. And like I said, I've recently just learnt there the Farewell to the Brethren of St James, which is a good one. As a member of Bolton being able to do that, that's another tradition that the the Deputy Master does at our burn supper. You know, they'll get up in front of the brethren and they have to perform that to the brethren from memory. So I've seen my dad do it. I've seen all the past masters that have been there since I joined perform it, and you never ever get bored with it. The words in it it's a true reflection on how heartbroken he was, you know, with the thought of leaving them to go to this job in Jamaica. And he certainly has immortalised it in such a way that you can tell he's heartbroken. You know, he doesn't want to, but he has to because he's got obligations. You know, he's got commitments that need to be understood and conducted. And this means going. This is what I have to do to support people.
Right, you've talked about it. Any chance you could recite it?
Which one, the address or the farewell?
Farewell.
I can do. Now, again, I'm not going to lie to you. It was 2 days. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm sure you will have heard it as well. So if you can prompt me there, that'd be fantastic.
Well, the thing I would say, Stephen, is this will be the first time it's been in any of these podcasts. So it'd be great. Even if you've got to read it, it'd be brilliant.
Well, we'll give it a shot without it first. So the farewell to the St James Brethren. Adieu, heart-warm, fond adieu. Dear brothers of the mystic tie, ye favoured, ye enlightened few, companions of my social joy. Though I to foreign lands must hie, pursuing fortune's slidery bore, with melting heart and brimful e'e, I'll mind you still when far awa. Oft have I met your social band, and spent the cheerful festive night, oft honoured with supreme command, presided o'er the sons of light. And by that hieroglyphic bright, which none but craftsmen ever saw, strong memories of my heart shall write those happy scenes when far awa. May freedom, harmony, and love unite you in the grand design, beneath the omniscient eye above, the glorious architect divine, that you may keep the unerring line, still rising by the plummet's law, till order bright completely shine, shall be my prayer when far awa. And you, farewell, who merits claim justly that highest badge to wear. Heaven bless your honoured noble name, to masonry and Scotia dear. A last request permit me here, when yearly ye assemble all, one round I ask it with a tear, to him the bard that's far awa. Thank you.
That's, as Douglas says, that's the first we've had it, and I actually love that. It's the essence of it. I really enjoy it, and I'm not a Mason. I don't pretend to be, but it's a wonderful, wonderful part of Burns.
It is truly, and I feel that those last two, you know, the last words, a last request, permit me here, when yearly ye assemble all. That's like when you do this every year. You know, the one thing I ask you. And it's true, it's a beautiful poem. You don't need to be a Mason to understand that man's heartbroken.
Yeah.
And I feel that the poem starts off in a nice way and it ends with a truly heartfelt, you know, I will miss you.
Well, I've got to say, having heard you doing that recitation, I don't think 224 lines of Tam O'Shanter is going to be much to daunt you, to be honest.
Well, I value your optimism, I really do.
No, seriously, if you can do that, once you get into rhythm, Tam O'Shanter's a story.
A tale.
It's no like some of his poems that, I mean, Epistle to a Young Friend is just going, boo, boo, boo. It's just whatever is coming into his head, whereas that's a story, and I mean, know that I'm going to recite it for anybody nowadays, but for lots of reasons. But I don't think you'll have any bother. I think you'll be fine.
We're getting there. I'll tell you, I went to Alloway, and my missus hates it when I go there. I go there quite regularly with Phoebe's younger brother Hamish, and it's great because we go the walk, we go for a coffee, and the rubbish bit is I go into the gift shop. You know what I mean? And it's the girls are friendly that work there. and they always end to come out with something. And I came out with a book on Burns, and I started reading it, and that's where I've learned all my poems. That's one specific book. And like I said, because of Billy Niven and because of people, and you go into the odd charity shop and you'll find a book on Burns, and everything's different. You know, I've got a book on Burns's country. It's that big, by about that thick. And I'm in Burns's country, and half this stuff I couldn't tell you. You know, I stay 2 minutes from Auchencruive, and there's a monument down there. I only found out about that 2-3 weeks ago. You know, I've lived here for nearly 5 years. I had no idea that was there.
You're very close to the Tristan Thorn as well.
Well, I've got a yeah.
I've
got a friend that stays there now at Kilmarnock, and he does a lot of our agricultural work here on the farm. And I had to go down and pay him one day, and it was quite a funny story. Like when Max and I talk on the phone, we will end up talking for about an hour and a half on, you name it. You could talk about a door handle, and the next thing you know, we end up bringing it back to Burns. He'll tell you this is true. I have spent longer on the phone to Max than my missus sometimes. And I was on the phone to him, and he says, "What are you up to?" And I says, "I'm away down to pay Ian for the hedge cutting." "Oh, you'll be going by the Trice and Thorn." And out of nowhere, out came the Soldier's Return.
Aye.
You know, and we were yapping away, and I went, you know, past the mill and Trice and Thorn when Nancy after I courted. I went, just off the top of his head, it's fantastic. But sure enough, you see this, and then my local used to be called the Trice and Thorn.
Right.
So there's references everywhere.
And the great thing about the Trice and Thorn, I've got to tell you, it was a couple of Masons who basically regenerated all the work that was done on it, and that would be Willie Dick and Angus Middleton, and they put quite a lot of effort into getting everybody doing their day stuff, and it made a huge difference to it. But if I could move you just a wee bit, you were talking earlier on about doing stuff at the school. Did you enter any of the school competitions?
Yeah, well, this was at the end of the year, at the end of my schooling years, sorry. That's when I finally gave it a go with Tam O'Shanter. Now, back then, I certainly don't anymore, but back then they would say I had the voice of an angel. And I was involved with I know it's hard to believe, Jim, just when you're laughing.
It certainly is.
It's a way now, so it is. But I can assure you this, we learnt You Banks and Bray of Bonnie Doon.
Oh.
It's beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song that's sung by Lassie.
Oh, fantastic. But back then I had that pitch. Do you know what I mean? So
they take the thorn though.
Oh, I done the hard bit. But we had Miss Nelson was our music teacher. Her name was, and she loved it. And I had done a lot of singing with different songs, and I done a bit on it. And it wasn't your traditional version. It isn't. I've heard it that many times now. It's fantastic. Right enough when you said there, Jim, you get somebody that really can sing it. It's phenomenal. But that was like the first time that I ever done anything where I said, I'll do it, no problem. But we had two a mouse, we had everything, but again, you're doing it in front of the whole school. And I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to. I had no want or drive to go and do it. Tam O'Shanter was the first time that I learnt it. And did you say you can do the poem, Jim?
I used to do it, and I got caught up in researching the poem and ended up writing a book. But nowadays, to be honest with you, I don't think I could actually. Having said that, when I hear it, I know it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that. The last time I did it was at a lunch supper somewhere on the south side of Glasgow, and the only reason I did it was the guy who's supposed to do it didn't appear. And the guy who's running it says, "Jim, will you do it?" I says, "I haven't done Tam O'Shanter for a few years." Yeah, and he says, "You're up." And I stood up and I got through it, but I'm not as polished a speaker as in terms of, or a reader, as we would say here, so I'm not as polished as some people. So I tend to stay away from Burns apart from a couple of poems. But I could probably end up rattling all together with half an hour of looking at it again. And I look at it most days because I'm looking at that most days.
And then out of Tam O'Shanter.
Aye, that's a bit, because there's always something that occurs and somebody will say something to me, and I go back and check what I wrote, because it's
Oh, did
just
you write that yourself?
what?
Did you
Yeah.
write that book? Is that what you said?
That there is 2.5 years of Jim's life, basically.
Fantastic.
And Mrs. Thompson, who's a wonderful woman, I've got to tell you, she put up with me.
Yeah,
And
the patience of a saint.
we went to New Galloway, and we ended up and one day, and I was looking for a doctor's grave, and I hadn't a clue. And if it hadn't been for the beautiful, and I'm saying beautiful because I mean beautiful, lady who was the minister, if she hadn't got me and says, no, that's not, and she told me, and she took me straight to the grave, and then she starts telling me the history of the man, which I ended up in the book as well.
That's fantastic. That
but that's the thing. I mean, I find Tam O'Shanter. I don't know how many times I've heard that. I've judged the competition. I've listened to, and I'm probably biased because for me the best Tam O'Shanter comes from a boy from Newcomer, and what he does is just wonderful. And he's been on this podcast, Jim. It's a tale. When you read the process of Burns writing the story, it is a tale. It's no anything. You don't need 400 bloody things that they're to, you know, there's my knife and all this kind of stuff. But I've seen folk with a table full of props, and they're very entertaining. And I'm not criticising this, but if you're talking about Tam O'Shanter as a piece of work by Burns, if somebody does it, just stand, and Jim just stands and puts his elbow on the fireside, if you like. Tam O'Shanter, a tale, and it's absolutely, it's incredible to listen to.
It is fascinating when you get somebody who can. I heard it the other night there at the Bachelors in it Ayr again, but I got up and done that poem. I can't mind the boy's name, but he'd just learnt this. I'm not joking you. And he got up in front of he done it for the first time since learning it in Burns's cottage to 2 members of the performers. They then invited them to the Christmas meeting, and he got up and done it. And he said to me, "Oh, I missed a bit," and he did. He says, "What part was it?" Captain Jean. That's the bit that he missed. I'll never forget this. And then she was a Blenheim, dressed in drunken Blenheim. From November to October, market day was as well. That every nigger had a shoe on, the smith and thee got roaring full on. That at the Lord's house, even on a Sunday.
See, that's a mistake.
And then, but this is what he's done. He's saying, at the Lord's house on a Sunday, she prophesied that later. So he missed out Captain Jean.
Now, what the poem says is, though, when he's doing that, is at the lady's house, even on a Sunday, thou sat with Captain Jean till Monday. It's the lady's house because 2 sisters, the Kennedy sisters, had a pub, right? And there's no way in the creation of the wee man would be drinking on a Sunday, and they certainly wouldn't have been in a pub drinking on a Sunday. It just didn't happen. But when you go to the actual manuscript, the Commemorative manuscript, I'm boring you now, but the Commemorative manuscript.
No, you're not. This is brilliant, yeah.
The alteration on it because he has it with a double apostrophe S.
Right.
It's very rare in English. Right, and he's changed it for, and it's not the lady's house, it's the lady's house.
Now at the lady's house, even on a Sunday.
Now drank with Captain Jean till Monday.
This is what I'm talking about here, Jim. Now you said that, it says I'm boring you there. You've got me drawn into the computer and I'm listening. Because this is the stuff where if you don't ken this, where's it coming from? You know what I mean?
You read a book.
Send me a book, I'll have a wee read it. I'm sure Phoebe won't mind another book in the collection.
I mean, there was an old Polish I used to work with years ago. I can't even remember the man's name, but I've got his book here, and it's Burns in Ayrshire. It's a phenomenon. It really is. Andra, I'll come back to me. He was a superintendent doing at Salford. And it's stuff like that. I mean, I tend to read something Burns every day. Right, just I pick something up and but the issue for me, again, I go back to basics. It's trying to understand what somebody in the 18th century is going through and actually putting in paper and having the whole thing so polished. Because I mean, he was a genius and he was well educated, but that doesn't change the fact that he's probably one of the greatest writers that's ever lived.
Period. Absolutely. There's no way you can look at it and not feel a sense of. And now they've got it. I don't know when the last time you were in the cottage was. They've got the word inspiration written on the wall, and you're looking at that where he was born. You know, his father built that house, the old clay biggin.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's been altered slightly since Burns was in it or since he was born. But you look at that going, how can somebody in life start like this in Alloway all the years ago? Now, there was no phones, there was nothing like that, thank goodness, because could you imagine how this happens? I don't, in such a short period of time. You go to Handsome Nell, the boy was 15 when he wrote that. When I was 15, I was still falling out of trees. I couldn't talk to anyone. I was nowhere near able to put a chat up line equivalent to Handsome Nell. I'm copying like the only thing I could have possibly said, and they like back then was, I like the PlayStation. Do you like the PlayStation? That's about it. And 15 years old, and he does that, and it's the snowball effect. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's it.
The good thing for you, of course, too, I've got to say, is the Masonic connection with Burns. I mean, I've caused fights in the Bachelor's Club and all that. Right, seriously, you know, I would just start an argument and then sit back. But
just throw the grenade.
The connection with the Masonic movement in Burns is a great thing, and most Masons have at least taken the chance to read about Burns or read some of his poems and songs and stuff like that. But a lot of them, like yourself and several people you've named on here already, and it's not just about Masons, it's Masons in every place I've ever been.
Masons, yeah.
They're just into Burns.
It's one of those things that I look at it and I've got a marked token. So every Masonic lodge has got a token that they can sell, you can buy. And I've got a book of these things. And Burns is on many, many a token. It really is. But even look at monuments, like it's a global. I went to the Alloway Museum. There's books translated in how many different translations. You know, you've got it in Russian. You've got all these things. You've got a book in Braille.
I've got it up here, and I don't know how many languages I've got to say. But the thing about it too is, I don't know how many times I spoke at, you know, Burns suppers in terms of, you know, the Masonic order. And every time before I go, I ask, do you want me to do a Masonic Burns memory? And every single time they say the same thing, no.
Nope. There's more to life. There's more to Robert Burns than being a Mason. And there's more to Masons or Masonry than Robert Burns. And that's exactly it. It's the whole thing that man has done. You take away him being a Mason. I'll tell you, you look at it now, when he was taking subscriptions for the first edition, the Kilmarnock edition, he
wouldn't get published in his own lifetime without Masonic help.
Masonry made that possible. And because of that act of generosity, and it is an act of generosity. Right, Ken, what, Robert, I like that. There's a couple of quid for one. I'll take a book. And then it get published. The Kilmarnock edition get published. And out of that act of generosity, it wasn't charity, you know, in any sort. It wasn't a poor man begging or asking for something because he hadn't had it. He wanted this. He had to sell subscriptions because the publisher didn't believe, you know, he didn't want to take that risk without having a return for it. And that was it. He sold it, pre-sold it, and there you go, the Kilmarnock edition. And now you look at what that is today. You mentioned Angus Middleton. I've seen the interview where the boy's at the Irving Burns Club, and he's actually looking at a Kilmarnock edition there. And it's unbelievable that these items of history are still here. I'll tell you a funny story. Like it says, I've got it here. I could show you it quickly if you want to see it. It's quite funny. My mum and dad's neighbour, Janie, I didn't realise how big a Burns fan she actually was. And she's a lovely woman. She is a lovely woman. She was your past Burns Club member, and me and her have spoken in great detail about our love for Robert Burns. And I had read quite a lot of my wee book collection, and I says to her, would it be okay if I borrowed one of your books? Yes, son, go help yourself. So I goes over to her house, and my missus has since got me this to keep it in. But the realisation of what it was quite funny, because I was talking again to Max about this, and I went over, picked up the book, came back home, and that was it. Right? So I knew that there was Kilmarnock editions about, I really did, but when I opened it up and you looked at the binding, you looked at everything, the first thing that I got on it was a bit of writing, something else, and then 17 something. And I looked at it, went, I wonder. So I went and got something to be very, very careful with, obviously, the book and the binding, everything, because it's, no matter what this is an old book. And I was reading it, and sure enough, Kilmarnock edition, chiefly in the Scots dialect. And I was going through it, showing my dad, going, what's the chances that this is a first edition? We went through it and we're looking at the binding, everything. It's a really old book. We went down, he says it's not a first edition, it's a 12th edition. I went, that's still quite a big bit of history. And at the bottom of it was 1912. This book was done. Over 100 years old. You know what I mean? And I said that to my dad, like, you're reading away, you know, you're talking about all these poems, and the bit at the front, like the preface where you're talking about, you know, the history of Burns, and it's truly remarkable. That's going back to her in a couple of days, because I was reading it again for another immortal memory I was doing. But like I said, these things and these stories by these people, it's all great, you know, coming across like the very old book like that, or seeing like a Burns edition or a first edition in hand. But if you lose these stories that, you know, Janie's able to tell you, that's the worst bit of, you know, loss of information you can ever give, because that's where the true learning comes from. It's like us talking here. There you go, Jim, you've just spoke to me about, you know, Tam O'Shanter there. Douglas, we've spoken on the phone before. Like, this information's priceless. You know, you retain it, and then I pass it on, and that's what you do. And you keep that man that's over your left shoulder there, Douglas, you keep that memory alive forever. That's the main thing that you have to do.
That's fantastic, Stephen. And that's a great way to finish, because it's great to know that somebody of your generation is keeping that alive. And use the word, you said you're down at the cottage and use the word inspiration. I think you're an inspiration to other people, hopefully other people in your own age group, that are going to show the same degree of interest in Burns and the desire to keep the story going for years and years and years. So just want to say thank you for being with us and telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thank you.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for having me.